Most people cannot find Bosnia and Herzegovina on a map. The ones who can usually associate it with one thing, the war that ended in 1995. They think the country is dangerous. They think there is nothing to see. They are completely wrong. I spent 10 days in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the most forgotten country in Europe. What I found was a place where Ottoman bridges arc over emerald rivers, where wild horses still roam free in mountain meadows, where a 16th century Sufi monastery sits embedded in a vertical cliff, where Olympic bobsled tracks have been turned into art galleries by the same forest that consumed them, where the food is incredible, where the coffee culture is a centuries-old ritual, where the people are some of the warmest I have ever met, and where almost no one outside the Balkans is paying attention. Bosnia exists in the middle of Europe, surrounded by Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro, and somehow remains the continent's biggest open secret. Tourists overrun Dubrovnik and Split. They post the same photos of the same Croatian coast. 2 hours away, an entire country with stunning history, magnificent nature, and prices a third of those just over the border, sites completely empty. This is what I found in 10 days, exploring the most overlooked country in Europe. Hit subscribe and join Wanderlist. Ring that bell. Let me take you to Bosnia. Stay until the end. Place number 10 reveals the train journey that quietly ranks among Europe's most spectacular. My first morning in Bosnia. I walked toward the Neretva River and stopped at a stone bridge unlike any I had seen. The starry-most arches 24 meters above turquoise water in a curve that should not architecturally be possible. Ottoman architect Mimar Hayruddin built it in 1566. In November 1993, Croatian forces destroyed it with 60 shells. The city refused to accept the loss and rebuilt it stone by stone using the same limestone from the same hills. Local divers still leap from the top. Fun fact, Starry Most was destroyed by 60 artillery shells in a single afternoon in 1993, then rebuilt over 11 years using original stones recovered from the riverbed, the only UNESCO site deliberately destroyed and then resurrected by the people who lost it. Walking down Ferhadija Street. In Sarajevo, I crossed an invisible line. Behind me stood Austro-Hungarian buildings indistinguishable from Vienna. Ahead of me began the Ottoman Bazaar of Başçarşıya, wooden shops, copper coffee pots, and minarets. The transition takes one step. Locals call this the Sarajevo Meeting of Cultures. A plaque marks it. Within 200 meters stand a Catholic cathedral, an Orthodox church, a synagogue, and 3 mosques. Fun fact, Sarajevo is the only major European city where a Catholic cathedral, an Orthodox church, a synagogue, and multiple mosques all operate within a 500-meter radius, and a physical line in the pavement marks exactly where Ottoman architecture ends and Austro-Hungarian architecture begins. Beneath a modest house in Sarajevo's suburbs runs a tunnel that saved a city. Between 1992 and 1995, Sarajevo endured the longest siege of any capital in modern warfare, 1,425 days. Engineers dug an 800-meter tunnel beneath the airport runway, connecting the besieged city to free territory. Citizens crawled through it carrying food, weapons, and the wounded. Today, a 25-meter section remains as a museum. Walking through it bent over made me understand what survival actually looks like. Fun fact, the Sarajevo tunnel was 800 meters long, 1.6 meters tall, dug entirely by hand in 4 months in 1993, and allowed 1 million tons of food and 200,000 soldiers to pass beneath the Serbian-occupied airport during the longest siege of any modern capital. Walking through pine forests on Mount Trebević, above Sarajevo, I came upon something I was not prepared for. Twisting through the trees ran a 1,300-meter concrete bobsled track, abandoned, cracked, covered in graffiti. In 1984, this track hosted the Sarajevo Winter Olympics. 8 years later, the same hills were Serbian sniper positions. The track was damaged by shelling and never repaired. Today, street artists from across Europe paint the abandoned curves. Fun fact, Sarajevo's 1984 Olympic bobsled track sits abandoned on Mount Trebević, where it served as a Serbian artillery position during the siege, has never been repaired, and is now one of Europe's most striking street art galleries. Olympic curves twisting through silent pine forest. "12 kilometers south of Mostar, I found something that should not exist. The Blagaj Tekke is a 16th century Sufi dervish monastery built directly into a vertical cliff at the source of the Buna River. The white walls emerge from the rock as if grown from it. At the foot of the cliff, an impossibly turquoise spring erupts, the largest karst spring in Europe. Dervishes have prayed here for 500 years. The silence is the silence of a place that has refused to change. Fun fact, Blagaj Tekke is built directly into a karst cliff above the source of the Buna River, the largest underground spring in Europe. And Sufi dervishes have used this monastery continuously since the 16th century in a stone hall whose acoustics have never been matched. An hour south of Mostar, I arrived at a natural amphitheater 120 meters wide where the Trebizat River splits into more than a dozen waterfalls, cascading 28 meters into an emerald pool. Locals call it Bosnia's mini Niagara. Most visitors to Europe have never heard the name. Visitors swim at the base in summer. The Travertine cliffs are draped in vegetation. The water is the same impossible blue as everywhere else in Bosnia. Fun fact, Kravets Falls splits into more than a dozen separate cascades, plunging 28 meters into a natural amphitheater 120 meters wide, and the turquoise color comes from dissolved limestone reacting with sunlight, the same geological process that produces Croatia's famous Plitvice lakes. In the highlands above Livno, I encountered something I did not believe still happened in modern Europe. A herd of approximately 700 wild horses roams free across Krug Mountain, descendants of working horses released when mechanization replaced them. They have lived feral ever since. No fences, no owners, just generations living wild in mountain meadows. Seeing them silhouetted against pink Balkan light, I understood why locals consider them sacred. Fun fact, approximately 700 wild horses roam free on Krug Mountain above Livno, descendants of working horses abandoned in the 1950s when farms mechanized, and the herd has lived completely feral for over 70 years, one of the last free-roaming horse populations in Europe. Standing on Stari. I watched a man in red shorts climb the railing 24 meters above the Neretva. The river was 12 degrees. He waited for tourists to throw money. Then he jumped. Mostar Bridge. Jumping began in 1664 when locals dove from the original bridge to prove their bravery. The tradition never stopped. Today, an annual competition draws international cliff divers. Hitting the water wrong kills you. Hitting it right makes you a legend. Fun fact, Mostar Bridge jumping has been continuous since 1664, a 360-year unbroken tradition. The Red Bull Cliff Diving Series visits regularly, and the impact velocity from the 24-meter height reaches approximately 80 kilometers per hour into 12-degree water that has killed unprepared jumpers. 2 hours northwest of Sarajevo, I arrived at Jajce, a small medieval town where a 22-meter waterfall thunders directly through the old city. Stone houses sit on cliffs above the falls. Medieval walls climb the surrounding hill. The Pliva Lakes spread beyond in 2 emerald basins. Wooden watermills along the lakes have ground grain for the same families for 600 years. Jasi was the medieval capital of Bosnia until 1463, when the last king was beheaded by Ottomans. Fun fact: Jasi is the only town in Europe with a major 22-meter waterfall flowing directly through its historic medieval center, was the capital of the Bosnian kingdom until 1463, and its wooden watermills have operated continuously on the Pliva Lakes for over 600 years. On my last day, I took the train from Sarajevo to Mostar. The journey runs 130 kilometers through the Neretva Canyon and is one of Europe's most stunning railway routes. The train ambles through tunnels beside the green-blue river, wedged between mountains rising 1,500 meters. Outside the cities, Bosnia simply ends. The mountains take over. The forgotten country becomes a landscape so beautiful you forget every other place you have been. Fun fact: the Sarajevo to Mostar train runs 130 kilometers through the Neretva Canyon and is named among Europe's most spectacular railway routes, with the line passing through more than 70 tunnels and over 100 bridges built by Austro-Hungarian engineers in the early 1900s. I came to Bosnia expecting one thing. I left with a completely different impression. I expected a country still recovering from war. I found a country quietly thriving, rebuilding bridges, restoring monasteries, protecting wild horses, telling its own story on its own terms. I expected limited beauty. I found turquoise rivers, dramatic canyons, medieval cities, and a capital where 4 major world religions operate within a few hundred meters of each other. Most of all, I expected to be alone. And I was. Bosnia receives a fraction of the tourists that flood Croatia each year. The bridge at Mostar gets busy in summer, but everywhere else I went felt like I had discovered something. The wild horses of Livno, the waterfall through Jajce, the bobsled track in the trees, the Sufi monastery in the cliff. None of it was on Instagram. All of it was unforgettable. If you want to see Europe before the rest of the world catches on, go to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Soon. The secret is starting to spread, and once it does, the country I just described will not be forgotten anymore. Subscribe to Wanderlist. Comment below. Which Bosnia destination called to you most? Starry most? The wild horses? The cliff monastery? Bosnia is waiting.